I carefully laid out the table just like I had done every Sunday for the past 15 years. Roasted salmon with rosemary and lemon, garlic mashed potatoes, and a fresh arugula salad, my grandchildren's favorites. Or at least that's what I had believed. I was wearing the lavender blouse I had bought just last week. A small thing, but it mattered to me. I hadn't treated myself in years, but this Sunday felt important. I was planning to bring up something special, something I thought we could all enjoy as a family. The doorbell rang at exactly 5:30 p.m. My son David had always been punctual, a trait he got from his father. "Hey, Mom," he said, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. He smelled like expensive cologne and, just a hint, cigarette smoke, the habit he swore he'd quit. Karen, my daughter-in-law, followed closely behind, dressed in a businesslike navy pantsuit, always formal, always slightly distant. She handed me a bottle of cheap wine with a tight smile. "Thanks for dinner," she said, as if it were a business transaction. "Grandma," Emma shouted as she ran past me into the living room without a glance. Lucas gave me a short nod, eyes still glued to his phone. I forced a smile. "Come in, everything's ready." David slid into his usual seat without comment. The kid slowly wandered to the table. "I made your favorite, Lucas," I said gently, placing a large portion on his plate. "I don't like salmon," he mumbled, pushing it away. I froze. All these years I thought he loved it. I looked at David for some sign, some correction, but he just shrugged. "Eat what you're given," Karen said curtly. The air at the table felt heavy. These dinners used to be filled with laughter, now they felt more like obligation than affection. I looked around and wondered quietly, when did I stop being family and start being furniture? Dinner moved along in slow, awkward silence. I asked how everyone's week had been, but only got short answers. "Same as usual," David said, barely looking up. "Work is work," Karen added, sipping water like she was at a corporate luncheon instead of her mother-in-law's table. Emma and Lucas barely touched their food. I noticed Lucas scrolling under the table. Emma moved her peas around but didn't eat. I swallowed my disappointment and gathered my courage. "I heard someone talking about a Disneyland trip last week," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "That sounds exciting. When are you going?" David and Karen exchanged a glance, a small one, but I saw it. "We're leaving in 2 weeks," David said, keeping his eyes on his plate. "It'll be a big group, Karen's parents, her sister and husband, and a few cousins." "Oh, that sounds lovely," I said, still smiling, though I felt my stomach tighten. "I'd love to join, if there's space." Karen set her fork down gently. "We've already booked the van. It seats 14, and all the spots are taken." I blinked, trying to process her words. "Of course," I murmured, "I understand." "It's probably for the best, Mom," David added quickly. "You know, with your knees and all, walking around the park all day wouldn't be comfortable." "I could rest at the cafes when I get tired," I offered. "I wouldn't slow anyone down." But Karen shook her head. "We don't want you to feel left out while everyone's moving from ride to ride. It just wouldn't work." I nodded again, my throat dry. "Of course, you're right." I knew I wasn't invited, but hearing it said so plainly, so politely, it still stung. Later that night, while cleaning up, I found a paper near Karen's chair, a folded itinerary. 14 names were listed, but the van seated 15. There was one empty seat, and it just wasn't for me. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of lukewarm chamomile tea, watching the streetlights flicker across the empty sidewalk. I replayed dinner over and over again, every glance, every shrug, every polite dismissal. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't being dramatic. I had become invisible in my own family, not because I'd done something cruel, not because I'd failed them, but because I had become inconvenient. The truth hit me like cold water. I was no longer someone they wanted to include. I was someone they tolerated out of habit. The Sunday dinners weren't about connection anymore. They were an obligation, a box to check. I stared at that folded itinerary again, 14 names. A list of people deemed worth the seat. I wasn't on it. They had made a space for Karen's cousin, who lived 3 states away and only visited once a year, but not me. It wasn't about the van. It was about how they saw me. I thought about the past decade, how many times I babysat last minute so Karen could go to conferences, how often I paid for groceries when David was between jobs. I even lent them $10,000 for their down payment and told them not to worry about paying me back. They never did. But the worst part wasn't the money, or the Disneyland trip. It was how easily they had erased me and how I had let them. I felt something shift deep in my chest. Not quite anger, not yet. It was quieter, steadier, a kind of knowing. I wasn't bitter, I was done. For the first time in years, I saw it clearly. I had built a life around being useful to people who only saw me as convenient, and now I was finally ready to change that. Not with shouting, not with guilt, but with silence and a plan. The following Sunday, I didn't cook, I didn't roast the salmon, I didn't peel the potatoes, I didn't set the table with the blue and white china my mother had passed down to me. The house was quietly still, not even the radio hummed in the background. I let the silence stay. At 5:26 p.m., I got a text from David. "We're on our way, traffic's late today." I didn't respond. At 5:40, the doorbell rang. I was upstairs in my reading chair with a library book I'd been meaning to start for months. I didn't move. More texts followed. "Mom, are you okay? We're outside." I watched from the upstairs window as they stood on the porch, confused. Karen knocked twice sharply. Emma kicked at a stone on the path. Lucas didn't even look up from his phone. Eventually, they walked back to the car. No shouting, no panic, just inconvenience. That was what I had become to them, and now they would feel the weight of that absence. I didn't leave a note. I didn't owe them one. Later that night, I turned my phone off, made a pot of soup just for myself, lit a candle at the table, and played soft jazz on the old stereo. It felt like breathing after being underwater. On Monday, David called 6 times. I didn't answer. He left one voicemail. "Hey, Mom, not sure what happened yesterday," Karen said. "Maybe you forgot. The kids were disappointed. Call me." That word, disappointed, stuck with me. I hadn't missed a single Sunday in 15 years, and the first time I stepped back, they thought I had simply forgotten. They never imagined I had chosen not to be there, and that was the real message. Not an angry text, not a confrontation, but absence, the kind that echoes longer than any words. The next Sunday came, and again I did nothing. No invitation, no reminders, no meal prep, just quiet. By 4 p.m., David called again. This time I answered. "Mom," he said, relief flooding his voice, "we're coming over tonight. Karen's bringing dessert." "No, David," I said gently but firmly, "there's no dinner tonight. I've done it every week for 15 years. I think it's time I do something different with my Sundays." He didn't respond at first, then defensiveness crept in. "You could have just said something, you didn't have to ghost us." "I wasn't ghosting," I said calmly. I was pausing to think, to breathe, to ask myself if these dinners were still something I looked forward to, and the answer was, no. "Emma cried last week," he added, as if to guilt me. "Then maybe you should explain to her that family works both ways," I replied, "that grandma isn't just here to feed people and be left out of vacations." He went quiet again. I let the silence settle. "Look," he finally said, "maybe we've taken you for granted." "That's not something I need you to admit," I said, "I already know it." From that day on, I didn't cut them off, but I did something harder. I set new rules, no more assumed Sundays. If they wanted to spend time with me, they'd have to ask, plan, and make the effort, and I wouldn't always say yes. I started volunteering at the library on weekends, took walks in the park, and went to watercolor classes on Wednesdays. I had always wanted to paint. I began giving to myself, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect, and it felt beautiful, like waking up in a house you didn't realize had windows. 3 months passed. They came less often. Sometimes I saw Emma and Lucas for quick visits, but the big Sunday dinners never returned. I missed them, but I didn't miss the version of myself I had to become to keep them close. Then came my birthday. I didn't expect much. Honestly, I had planned to spend the day reading, maybe bake something sweet just for me. Around 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. It was Emma alone. She held a bouquet of wildflowers awkwardly wrapped in paper towels. "Dad said, you might not want company," she mumbled, "but I wanted to come anyway." I let her in. She sat at the kitchen counter, legs swinging, watching me mix a bowl of cake batter. "I miss your dinner," she said softly. "I miss the smell of cinnamon in the kitchen and the way you always knew which part of the chicken I liked." My throat tightened. "I miss you, too." She looked down. "I didn't know you felt left out about Disneyland. I thought you just didn't like theme parks." "I didn't mind the park," I said. "I minded being forgotten." Emma blinked, then whispered, "I'm sorry." I placed the spoon down and walked over. "Thank you for coming today. It means a lot more than you think." We baked the cake together, no big speeches, no forced smiles, just time, real and quiet. That evening, David called. "Emma told me you two spent the day together," he said. Yes, I replied. He hesitated. I'd like to come by next weekend. No pressure, just us. Maybe I could bring lunch. A pause. Then I said, that would be nice. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was something real. And sometimes healing begins not with a grand apology, but with a small, honest visit and a cake baked from scratch. The next weekend, David came by just like he said he would. He brought sandwiches from a local deli and a bouquet of sunflowers. No Karen, no kids, just him. We sat in the backyard under the maple tree I planted the year he left for college. For the first few minutes, we talked about safe things, weather, work, the neighbor's new dog. Then slowly, the conversation shifted. I've been thinking a lot, he said, setting down his drink. I think we started seeing you as part of the routine, not as a person. You were just always there, and we stopped asking if you were okay with that. He looked up, his eyes earnest. I'm sorry, Mom. For the first time, I believed him. I don't want the old Sundays back, I told him. Not if it means going back to how things were, but I'd be open to something new, something real. He nodded. Dinner at my place next week, I'll cook. I smiled. Just don't burn the lasagna. From that small seed, a new rhythm began, not weekly, not scheduled, but chosen. Sometimes it was just me and David. Other times Karen came with the kids. We'd have tacos on the porch or soup in the living room. No one expected me to host. No one expected anything, except presents. One evening, Emma brought over her school project, a family tree. At the top, she had written my name in bold letters. Because you're the roots, she said simply. I cried that night, but it wasn't from hurt, it was from release. I had spent years holding everyone together, forgetting that I was allowed to take up space, too. Now, finally, I had a family who saw me not as the table they ate at but as someone worth sitting beside, and that made all the difference. Looking back now, I don't regret stepping away. For the first time in years, I chose myself, not out of anger, not to punish anyone, but simply to reclaim the parts of me I had buried beneath duty, politeness, and silence. People often think revenge has to be loud, dramatic, explosive, but sometimes the most powerful revenge is quiet. It's choosing peace over guilt, boundaries over obligation, and truth over pleasing others at your own expense. I didn't scream, I didn't slam doors, I didn't write long angry texts. I just stopped showing up to a system that didn't see me, and slowly, when the silence settled, they began to notice. Not all relationships recover, some won't, and that's okay, but the ones that do, when built back with mutual respect, are stronger than before. If you're watching this and you've been the unacknowledged one, the one always hosting, giving, staying silent, let this be your permission. You don't have to burn bridges, but you can stop carrying people across them alone. You are not selfish for needing space, you are not wrong for feeling tired, and you are not invisible, though they may have treated you that way. Start with one pause, one quiet Sunday, one no spoken softly but firmly. See what happens when you take your presence back. My name is Evelyn Pierce, and this is how I found my peace, not through fury, but through clarity. If my story speaks to you, I hope you find the courage to rewrite your own, because you matter, your voice matters, and your silence, when chosen, not forced, can echo louder than any words. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below, share it with someone who might need it, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about strength, dignity, and reclaiming your place in a world that sometimes forgets to say thank you. Until next time, take care of yourself, you deserve it.